There are days when you wake up already tired. Your phone is the first thing you reach for, and before your feet even touch the floor, you've scrolled through 100 lives that look better than yours. Everyone seems to be moving forward, faster, happier, more confident, and you're just stuck. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow. The workout, the project, the dream, the better version of you. But somehow, tomorrow keeps moving further away. You go through your routine on autopilot. Same road, same people, same conversations. And yet, something inside feels hollow. You're busy, but not alive. You're achieving, but not fulfilled. And when night comes, when the world quiets down, that question returns, the one you've tried to silence with noise, screens, and work. What's the point of all this? Why do I feel so lost when everything seems fine? You start to wonder if this emptiness is normal, if maybe everyone is pretending to be okay. But deep down, you know this isn't how life is meant to feel. There has to be something more, a reason, a meaning, something that makes every struggle worth it. And that's where our story begins. Because there was once a man who faced the worst of human suffering, who lost his freedom, his family, everything he loved, and still discovered that life can have meaning, even in pain. That man was Viktor E. Frankl, and his book, Man's Search for Meaning, has changed millions of lives across generations. This is not just another motivational idea. It's a truth that no matter how hard or unfair life gets, we always have one freedom left: to choose meaning. Welcome to Top Summary, where you learn from successful people, transform your life, and see your growth unfold. If you're new here, we bring you inspiring book summaries and practical lessons to help you grow faster and live better. But to understand what Viktor Frankl meant, to really feel it, we need to see how meaning unfolds in an ordinary life, just like yours. Not in the pages of history, but in the quiet struggles of today's world, where people smile on the outside but ache on the inside. Meet Aryan, a young man who wakes up each morning feeling the same invisible weight pressing on his chest. He's got a decent job, a phone full of friends, and a life that looks fine. But somewhere between deadlines, distractions, and dreams postponed, he's lost something, the fire that once made him feel alive. He doesn't know it yet, but soon, one small moment, one simple book, will change the way he sees everything, his pain, his purpose, and his entire life. The alarm rang at 6:30 a.m., but Aryan didn't move. The faint hum of the ceiling fan filled the room, the kind of sound that becomes louder when your mind is quiet but restless. He lay still, eyes half open, watching the light crawl across the wall like a lazy tide. His phone buzzed again. Messages, reminders, the endless rhythm of other people's lives. He scrolled without thinking. Pictures of friends on vacations, weddings, promotions, celebrations. All smiling, all purposeful. He put the phone down and whispered into the silence, "What am I even doing?" He had a good life by every standard. A decent job as a software developer, parents who loved him, friends who checked in, and yet, an invisible weight pressed on his chest each morning. It wasn't sadness exactly. It was emptiness, a dull ache of having everything and still feeling like something essential was missing. Each day was a loop. Wake, rush, work, eat, scroll, sleep, and repeat. He told himself it was just burnout, that everyone felt this way at times. But deep down, he knew it wasn't that simple. Somewhere along the way, the light that once drove him to create, to explore, to matter, had dimmed into a quiet flicker. On his commute, he'd often stare out the train window, Watching people walk hurriedly on platforms, faces buried in phones or thoughts. He wondered if they too carried the same silent question. What is all this for? One evening, as the sky bruised into orange and violet, Aryan stopped by a small roadside stall that sold used books. The old man running it smiled kindly and said, "Looking for something specific?" Aryan shook his head. "Just browsing." He ran his fingers across faded titles. "Think and Grow Rich," "The Power of Now," "Sapiens." And then, his eyes stopped on one, "Man's Search for Meaning" by Viktor E. Frankl. Something about the title felt magnetic. He didn't know who Frankl was, but the word search for meaning sounded eerily close to what his heart had been whispering for months. Without overthinking, he paid for it and tucked it into his backpack. That night, he made a cup of tea and sat by the window. Rain was tapping softly against the glass, like nature's own metronome. He opened the book and started reading. Within a few pages, Aryan was transported into another world, the world of concentration camps, where human beings were reduced to numbers, where survival itself was an act of defiance. Yet, amidst the darkness, one voice stood calm, observing, questioning, understanding. Viktor Frankl wrote not as a victim, but as a philosopher who had looked pain in the eye and asked, "Why live?" and found an answer. He had lost everything: family, freedom, future, and still discovered one thing no one could take away: the freedom to choose one's attitude. Aryan closed the book for a moment. The rain had grown heavier. He could feel his pulse in his chest. If a man who lost everything could still choose hope, he thought, then what excuse do I have? He began to read more intently, underlining a line that struck him. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. The next morning, Aryan tried something new. Instead of rushing out of bed, he sat quietly for 2 minutes, breathing slowly. He told himself, "I get to choose my attitude today." On his way to work, he noticed things he usually ignored: the smell of roadside tea, the laughter of two school children sharing a biscuit, an old man feeding stray dogs. Small, ordinary things, but suddenly alive with meaning. At the office, he faced the usual chaos: deadlines, bugs, meetings that felt endless. But every time frustration rose, he remembered Frankl's lesson. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. He took that space. He paused. He breathed. During lunch, his colleague Ravi sighed, "I'm so tired of this job. Man, it feels pointless." Aryan smiled faintly. "Maybe it's not the job that's pointless," he said. "Maybe it's how we look at it." Ravi laughed. "You sound like a philosopher today." Aryan just shrugged. "Maybe I'm trying to be." That evening, as he walked home, the sky was dark but full of stars. He felt something he hadn't in a long time. Not happiness exactly, but clarity. Later that week, while reading more of Frankl, he came across another powerful truth. When we can't change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That line followed him for days. A few nights later, Aryan met his childhood friend Meera for dinner. She had always been the curious type, chasing experiences and meaning. She noticed the worn book in his bag and grinned. "Still reading psychology stuff?" "It's more than psychology," he said. "It's about life." She leaned forward. "Tell me one thing it taught you." Aryan thought for a moment. That even when life gets unbearable, there's still a choice left: how we respond. That's our last freedom. Meera nodded slowly. "That's powerful." "It's strange," Aryan said, but I think I'm finally learning to live even when nothing around me changes. That night, lying in bed, Aryan replayed their conversation in his mind. He realized that meaning doesn't appear when everything is perfect. It appears when you decide to act with purpose despite the imperfections. The following weekend, he took a solo trip to the nearby hills. He hiked alone, no music, no distractions, just the sound of wind through trees and his own thoughts. He remembered Frankl's line, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." Sitting on a rock overlooking the valley, he whispered, "What is my why?" The question lingered in the breeze. He didn't have an answer yet, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid of not knowing. He closed his eyes and thought of people around him. His parents who had worked tirelessly to give him stability, his friend Ravi struggling with self-doubt, the old bookseller who smiled without needing much. Maybe meaning, he thought, isn't something you find. Maybe it's something you give. When he returned home that evening, he found an email waiting, an invitation to mentor new interns at work. Normally, he'd have ignored it, thinking, not my responsibility. But this time, he clicked accept. Not because it would help his career, but because it felt right. Over the next few weeks, something subtle began to shift. He started arriving early, greeting people sincerely, listening more than talking. He didn't suddenly become a different person, but his world felt different, alive, connected, purposeful. One morning, as he walked into the office, he saw a small act that stopped him. The janitor quietly picking up spilled coffee with care, humming a tune under his breath. It struck Aryan like a revelation. Even this man, doing what many overlook, had found rhythm, dignity, and meaning in his work. That night, Aryan wrote in his journal, "Maybe meaning isn't in what we do, but in how we do it. Maybe life isn't asking me to be extraordinary. Maybe it's asking me to be present." He slept peacefully, the kind of sleep that doesn't come from exhaustion, but from understanding. A few days later, he visited his parents. His mother asked, "Are you doing okay, Beta? You look calmer these days." Aryan smiled. "I think I'm learning to see things differently." His father chuckled, "Finally growing up, huh?" Aryan laughed softly. "No, Dad, just growing inward." That night, while helping his mother wash dishes, he felt something beautiful, a quiet gratitude for simple acts that had once felt invisible. The smell of soap, the clinking of plates, the hum of the fan, all became part of a moment that meant something. Before sleeping, he picked up the book again and whispered, "Thank you, Dr. Frankl." If you enjoy our top summaries and storytelling, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this with someone who might need it today. We've got some bonus action items for you at the end, so keep listening. Now, let's get back to the story. Days turned into weeks, but Aryan no longer felt like he was merely drifting through them. Life still demanded the same things: deadlines, noise, traffic, tired mornings. But somewhere between all that, a quiet shift had begun. He had stopped asking, "What do I get from today?" and started asking, "What can I give to it?" It was subtle at first: a slow walk to the office, a sincere good morning, a few extra minutes helping a colleague. Yet every small act stitched together a new rhythm in his life. But as life often does, it soon tested what he was learning. One Friday evening, Aryan's phone rang. It was his mother. Her voice trembled slightly as she said, "Your father isn't feeling well. He's been coughing a lot, and the doctor said we should do some tests." The words hit him like a cold gust. His father was strong, The kind of man who rarely fell sick, who kept everything in control. Hearing uncertainty in his mother's voice unsettled him. Aryan packed a bag and took the first train home. The journey was long and quiet. Through the window, the city lights gave way to open fields. He remembered Frankl's line. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. It suddenly felt painfully real. When Aryan reached the hospital, his father was sitting up in bed, smiling faintly. "I am fine. Don't worry so much," he said, trying to lighten the mood. But Aryan could see the fatigue in his eyes. That night, as his father slept, Aryan sat in the dimly lit corridor outside, surrounded by the low hum of machines and the smell of disinfectant. He watched a nurse gently adjust an old woman's blanket, saw a man praying silently in the corner. Every person here, he realized, was facing some version of pain, loss, fear, uncertainty. Yet life went on. He thought about Frankl's time in the camps, how suffering stripped people of everything, yet some found ways to keep dignity alive, even through kindness or a single smile. Aryan understood now, pain is universal, but meaning is personal. The next morning, as his mother dozed off, Aryan sat beside his father. They didn't talk much. He simply held his father's hand. It was warm, but frail. For the first time, he noticed the wrinkles, the veins, the years that had quietly passed. His father opened his eyes and smiled. "You've grown quieter," he said softly. Aryan chuckled. "Learning to listen more, maybe, to the world or to yourself. Both, I guess." There was silence, the kind that speaks louder than words. Later that day, while buying medicines, Aryan saw a young boy helping his grandmother walk slowly down the corridor. The boy held her arm gently, patient and unhurried. That small act, simple, uncelebrated, touched him more than any speech or quote ever could. That night, back home, Aryan wrote in his journal, "Maybe suffering isn't meant to be understood. Maybe it's meant to be faced with love." His father recovered slowly, and as days passed, Aryan realized that love itself could be a form of meaning. The quiet care, the patience, the presence, they all stitched something broken within him. A week later, back in the city, he met Maya, a friend he hadn't seen in months. She was an artist, free-spirited, always searching for beauty in chaos. They sat in a small cafe, the kind that smelled of roasted beans and rain-soaked air. "You seem different," Maya said. Aryan smiled. "I've been reading Viktor Frankl." "Ah, philosophy. Life?" he said. "He says we don't get to choose what happens to us, but we always get to choose how we respond." Maya leaned in. "So what's your response to all this, life?" Aryan looked out the window. "To show up, even when it hurts. To make the pain mean something." Maya's eyes softened. "That's beautiful," she whispered. They talked for hours, about dreams, fears, the strange human habit of postponing happiness. For Aryan, that conversation wasn't about romance. It was about connection, the realization that love, in any form, deepens meaning. In the weeks that followed, Aryan carried these ideas into his everyday life. When work got stressful, he remembered Frankl's words. "Don't aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you are going to miss it." For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued, it must ensue. He stopped chasing perfection at work. Instead, he focused on presence. When a new intern struggled with a task, Aryan didn't just fix it for him. He taught him patiently. When his manager unfairly criticized him, Aryan felt the usual wave of anger rise, but then paused, remembering, between stimulus and response, there is a space. He chose calm. That one choice changed the entire day. Yet, not every day was peaceful. One evening, exhaustion hit him like a wall. As he sat alone in his apartment, he felt the old emptiness whispering again. "You're still not enough," it said. "You're pretending to be wise, but you're still lost." He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he remembered something Frankl had written. Even when life has no apparent meaning, you must behave as if it does. Aryan got up, lit a small candle near his window, and whispered, "This moment has meaning, because I say it does." It wasn't a grand revelation, but it was real. The next weekend, he visited a nearby orphanage with a few friends. They spent the day playing with children, painting, sharing stories. One little girl, maybe 6 years old, gave Aryan a small drawing of a sun and said, "You look like someone who forgets to smile. This is for you." He laughed, trying to hide the lump in his throat. "Thank you," he said softly. That simple act, a child offering light, felt like life itself speaking to him. That night, as he looked at the drawing pinned to his desk, he realized something profound. Meaning doesn't come from what we achieve, but from what we touch, the lives we affect, the moments we notice, the love we give. His transformation was quiet but visible. Colleagues noticed his calmness, his steady energy. Maya once told him, "You walk like someone who's not in a hurry anymore." He smiled and said, "Maybe because I stopped running away from myself." Life still brought its share of challenges. Some days were mundane, others painful. But Aryan had learned something sacred. Suffering loses its sting when it gains meaning. One evening, while helping his father with a follow-up appointment, he overheard another patient, an elderly man, telling his wife, "Even if this is my last year, I'm grateful I got to spend it with you." The words echoed inside Aryan's mind for days. Gratitude, he realized, is one of the purest forms of meaning. He began writing small notes of gratitude every night, for people, for moments, even for struggles. And with each note, the emptiness inside him shrank a little more. By the end of that month, Aryan understood Frankl's message on a cellular level. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. He looked back on the months gone by, from restlessness to reflection, from emptiness to awareness, and smiled. Meaning hadn't fallen from the sky. He had built it, one choice at a time. As the sun dipped below the horizon one evening, painting his room in a warm umber glow, Aryan whispered to himself, "I can't always control life, but I can always choose how I live it." The next morning, he woke before dawn. The world outside was still, silent, soft, waiting. He brewed his coffee, sat by the window, and opened Man's Search for Meaning again. He read the line he'd underlined weeks ago. "Those who have a why to live can bear almost anyhow." He smiled. "I think I'm beginning to find my why," he said quietly. It wasn't one grand mission. It was many small ones: kindness, growth, love, presence. Each moment, he realized, could carry meaning if he was willing to see it. He closed the book gently and looked out at the rising sun. The light was warm, golden, alive, the same light that had greeted him countless mornings before. Only this time, Aryan finally saw it. Months had passed since Aryan first opened that thin, old paperback he'd bought from the roadside stall. But its words hadn't faded. They had taken root. What started as a quiet curiosity had become a lens through which he now saw everything. The world hadn't changed. The noise, the chaos, the rush, all still existed. But something deep inside him had shifted. He no longer sought meaning in the extraordinary. He found it in the ordinary. It was early morning. The city was still half asleep. A soft orange light painted the walls of his apartment as Aryan sat near the window, coffee in hand. He looked out at the waking streets. A vendor opening his stall, a child holding her mother's hand, the hum of beginnings. He smiled. For the first time in years, mornings didn't feel heavy. They felt sacred. Later that week, Aryan was invited to speak at a local youth seminar on finding direction in modern life. The thought of speaking in front of hundreds of people made him nervous. But this time, he didn't let fear dictate his choice. He saw it as another opportunity, a chance to serve. When he walked onto the stage, his hands trembled slightly. The crowd was a sea of faces. Students, working professionals, a few business owners, all looking for the same thing he once did, clarity. He began with a story. Not long ago, he said, I was lost. I had everything that should have made me happy. A job, comfort, a routine. But I felt empty. Then I came across a book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And it changed the way I looked at life. He paused, looking at the audience. Frankl survived one of the darkest chapters in human history, the concentration camps. But instead of asking, why me? He asked, what can life still expect from me? That one question changed everything for him, and eventually for me. He talked about how meaning isn't found in pleasure, success, or comfort, but in responsibility, love, and attitude. He told them how he learned to stop chasing happiness and start chasing purpose. The audience was silent, not the restless silence of boredom, but the attentive kind where every word sinks in. Then Aryan said something that would stay with many of them long after the session. We cannot always control what happens to us, but we can always control what happens within us. Between every challenge and your reaction lies a space, and in that space is your power to choose meaning. After the talk, a young student approached him. Sir, she said, I've been feeling lost lately. I keep comparing myself to others. How do I stop feeling like I'm behind in life? Aryan smiled warmly. You're not behind, he said. You're just looking sideways instead of inward. Everyone has a different mountain to climb. Find your own path, one step at a time, and make each step meaningful. You'll stop racing when you realize life isn't a competition. It's a journey of becoming. Another man, an entrepreneur in his 30s, came up next. Sometimes I feel like all I do is work. The pressure, the responsibility, it's exhausting. Aryan nodded. I know that feeling. But remember, meaning can be found even in pressure. Build something not just for success, but for service. When you remember why you started, the how becomes bearable. As the audience left, Aryan stayed back, sitting quietly in the now empty hall. He felt something deep, not pride, but gratitude. Gratitude that his pain had become a message. That evening, he met Maya again. They walked along the riverbank, the city lights reflecting like scattered stars on water. She asked, do you think meaning ever stops evolving? Aryan smiled. No, it grows as we do. We are never done searching, and that's the beauty of it. They stood in silence, the night calm around them. The river kept flowing, like life, endlessly moving forward. In that moment, Aryan realized that Viktor Frankl's message wasn't about finding a permanent purpose. It was about choosing meaning every day. In work, in love, in struggle, in small acts of kindness. He remembered one last quote from the book. Happiness cannot be pursued. It must ensue. One must have a reason to be happy. That night, as he lay in bed, Aryan felt that quiet reason pulsing within him. Life wasn't perfect, but it was alive with purpose. And that was enough. Reflections from Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor E. Frankl's masterpiece is not just a book about survival. It's a book about transformation. It reminds us that no matter how dark life becomes, there is always a reason to live. Frankl discovered that the people who survived suffering weren't always the strongest, but those who found meaning in it. Meaning through love, meaning through work, meaning through suffering itself. The lesson? You cannot always choose your pain, but you can choose your purpose. Core learnings from the book. Life always has meaning, even in suffering. Pain is not the enemy. Purposelessness is. Every hardship can reveal something valuable if faced with courage and awareness. Your attitude is your ultimate freedom. Between what happens and how you respond lies your greatest power. The power to choose. Don't chase happiness, chase purpose. Happiness follows meaning. It's the echo of a life lived with intention. Love gives life its deepest meaning. To love someone is to see their inner potential, even when the world doesn't. Responsibility creates resilience. Taking responsibility for your actions, your choices, and your mindset gives structure to your life. Suffering can refine, not define you. When pain is faced consciously, it becomes a teacher, not a punishment. Action items, daily meaning practice. For students, start your day by asking, what can I learn today that makes me grow, not just get grades? Practice gratitude journaling for 5 minutes every night. Note down what gave your day meaning. Focus on progress, not perfection. Study not to compete, but to understand and contribute. For working professionals, redefine your work as service. Who benefits from what you do? Turn every stressful situation into a challenge of attitude. How can I handle this with calm and clarity? Disconnect daily for 20 minutes. No screens, no noise. To reconnect with your inner compass. For entrepreneurs, anchor your business in purpose, not profit. Profit follows purpose. Ask yourself weekly, is my work solving a real problem or just filling a market gap? Create a culture of meaning. Help your team feel ownership and contribution, not just obligation. The daily meaning routine for everyone. Morning reflection, 5 minutes. Ask, what does life expect of me today? Not, what do I expect from life? Midday pause, 2 minutes. When overwhelmed, stop. Breathe. Remember, between stimulus and response, there is a space. Evening gratitude, 5 minutes. Write down 3 things that gave your day meaning, even the smallest ones. Weekly reset. Take 1 day each week to do something purely for others. Teach, help, call someone who needs to hear your voice. Monthly reflection. Ask, am I living by reaction or by purpose? Realign if you've drifted. Final message, the meaning of your life. Meaning is not something we find once and keep forever. It's a daily choice, a way of seeing, of living, of giving. When you live with meaning, you stop feeling like a victim of life and start becoming its co-creator. Remember, Viktor Frankl didn't survive by chance. He survived by choosing purpose every single day, even in the face of unimaginable darkness. And that's your invitation too. Find meaning in your challenges. Find meaning in your love. Find meaning in your work. Because the moment you do, even the smallest life becomes magnificent. That's all for today. we'll continue bringing you top book summaries that inspire change and reflection. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep transforming. Transform your thoughts, transform your life.